At 10 years old, Crown Prince Cecil Glo Alfasta was no ordinary child. His mathematics teacher tried to teach him, but Cecil was already inventing formulas that didn't even exist at the time.
What?
So this guy is like a giga genius. Wait a second, let's go back. Hold on. My Princess Seal, no theorem exists. Indeed. I've just created it. 10 years old. Okay, so this is where we're starting, huh? This tutor was so taken aback about how this would change everything, he ran off to go make a report to the society. Most would be at a loss, with their tutor dipping out on them. But Cecil could understand anything after hearing it once, so he didn't need to be lectured for long periods of time. It was all so boring to him. Until one day, his fiancée, the daughter of a marquis, Bertia Ibil Noches, told him she was the villainess.
Guys, is this mean for me to say? She's kind of fat.
She told him it was her role to rip him and the heroine away from each other and leave him completely shocked in the end. He smiled back at her because it was the first time something didn't make sense. Today was the first time he also met Bertia face to face, and it was clear he wasn't the only one who didn't understand what she was saying. He turned back towards her to say standing and chatting wasn't really the thing to do and invited her to tea. She somehow wasn't ready for that. That's where Cecil introduced his personal butler, the green-haired Zeno. Bertia stared at him sternly. Cecil asked what was wrong, and she thought he was a little too composed for his age. She asked if he was possibly also a reincarnation. Reincarnation was another curious idea to him. He explained he was taught that's how royals behave themselves. Zeno thought otherwise. This is how royals behave themselves? Butler. No, it isn't. He thought if there was some other detached, philosophical, 10-year-old prince, no one could stand it. I love how it's implied Cecil has basically Hokage-level thinking at the age of 10. It's like Itachi, munching like a fat pig. Bertia replied she understood. Then, she told him this may shock him, but she had more memories of a past life. In the land where she was born and raised, Japan, there were stories she could watch with moving pictures that were like novels. These otome games were something she enjoyed immensely. Dang, the shot of Cecil. When she regained her memories, that's when she realized she was born in the otome game that depicted this world. That's how she knew the scenario in the future, that Cecil would fall in love with the noble's daughter, the Maiden of Destiny, and that as the villainess, she would turn into a jealous demon and torment her horribly. This would eventually enrage Cecil, leading to the fall of Bertia's family. In short, getting the better of her would allow Cecil and the heroine to find happiness. Even though she was fated to fall, she wanted to do it beautifully and become a first-rate flower of evil. But look at her. She is so excited to be the villain and fall into ruin. This is a passionate story lover. Before this, Cecil had never once been unable to understand what someone was saying. Whether she had an overactive imagination or the power to predict the future, it didn't matter to him. But analyzing, he could see she was aiming to become a person who fits into this scenario of hers. As long as it wasn't something problematic for a future queen, he didn't mind. He asked what exactly was this first-rate flower of evil she mentioned. She told him, strong, noble, and beautiful. And though her path led to destruction, she took it without hesitation. At the thought of the 3 adjectives she mentioned, he took notice of her fat fingers and sloppy eating. Oh my god. So he's on the same page with me. She say strong, noble, and beautiful. He thinks she fat too. He realized he slipped. She grew flush, telling him he had the wrong idea. Bertia was always supposed to be someone who didn't have a chance, and as a character, her appearance was questionable. He thought that sounded sad, and asked if she was alright with that. Clutching her dress, she wasn't. All she spoke of was Bertia from the game. Who she was now was her own person. She admitted in her past life, she tended to hide in her own shell. But Cecil was her support as her chosen male lead. She actually wished for his happiness. That's why she was determined to become an honest, righteous flower of evil. Cecil again thought honest, righteous, and evil didn't make sense. Bertia promised to improve herself and come again, then ran away. Cecil wondered what that was all about. Zeno asked Cecil what he wanted to do, and the prince was intrigued. Bertia had none of the manners necessary to interact with royalty, and he didn't understand many of her words and actions. That's exactly what made her so entertaining to him. He planned to observe her for a while, and if it became necessary, he'd lead her down to the correct path. In his words, Zeno could see he was enjoying himself. And as for Cecil, the sense of unpredictability wasn't bad. Generally, he could do anything on his first attempt, so the world for him was a tedious place. He rarely ever felt a sense of accomplishment. In his eyes, the world lost its color, which is why he hoped Bertia wouldn't betray his expectations. Okay, so now that they kind of knocked out the whole dynamic, I think this premise is actually pretty interesting. So it is a reincarnated villainous story, but we're seeing most things from the prince's point of view, who knows all about it. Yeah, this is gonna be great. 1 year later, Zeno would present him a report from a messenger. Lady Bertia had secluded herself within her home for a year. Cecil was positive, which confused Zeno. But the prince had been keeping tabs on her and told him once he saw her, he'd understand. A few days later, they'd meet with a much slimmer Bertia, who had some kind of fox around her neck. Cecil was impressed. The reports were true. She'd been training the past year with diet and exercise to clean up her appearance. She was eager to know if he mistook her for someone else, and got quickly whacked by her father for her behavior towards the crown prince. The Marquis pleaded with Cecil to forgive his idiot daughter's rudeness. Cecil didn't mind, and thought it was childlike and adorable. This triggered something in her. She wanted him to say that one more time. She wanted him to call her adorable again. Aww. Her father took her aside and told her not to let the prince's appearance fool her. His eyes never smiled. He didn't have the necessary emotions to dote on cute things. He thought Cecil was too cold, and told her to make do with only him calling her adorable. While having tea, Kuro woke up and hopped off her. She apologized, but ever since she took her in, the little creature wouldn't leave her side. So she had Kuro imitate a scarf and brought her with her. Cecil pondered on this. It wasn't a successful imitation, but he knew what it was. He decided to keep quiet about it for now, so it would make things entertaining in the future. He offered Bertia tea and sweets, but the maid's cough signaled she had to sadly focus on her diet. That's why Cecil prepared these sweets made with reduced sugar, telling her he wasn't too particularly fond of sweets himself. Wow, he's so thoughtful. Bertia lit up, excited to munch, and the taste filled her with joy. Cecil thought she wanted to be evil, but felt like she was heading in the opposite direction. Discussing tomorrow's party, she decided as a first-rate villainess, she'd nobly fulfill her duty as his partner. He wondered why she meant to seem reliable, but now he felt anxious. He told her to keep the fact she was a reincarnated villainess a secret between the two of them. Entering high society was a world where you never know what may end up having a harmful result. She was at a loss, so he explained a flower of evil who left herself open to attack would seem inferior, and now she got it. Defeating one's opponent in secret was first-rate, while talking big and digging one's own grave was third-rate. She was going to be different from Bertia in the game by becoming a beautiful, noble flower. He was glad she got it, though he felt her understanding was slightly skewed. Tomorrow was his 11th birthday, and she was excited to celebrate it. Until she remembered that meant she'd be turning 10 soon. She began to tear up, explaining her mother would be dying then. According to the scenario, the cause would be from an epidemic that starts spreading in the summer. Right before her 10th birthday, Bertia's mother would die. She explained the challenge of an infectious disease that evolved, and how it took time to find a method to treat it. The herb they needed for the medicine, the Luana leaf, there just wasn't enough of it to go around. Many of the citizens would die. Cecil was familiar and thought it was definitely a difficult plant to cultivate. In the story, Bertia's father searches frantically for Luana leaves, but he doesn't find any. He asks the king to spare him some, but it doesn't happen, and her mother is buried under the pouring rain. Cecil told her to just prepare now. Saving her mother was more important than the game's scenario. Bertia loved her mother, but she knew if the events twisted, he might not get the ending he was supposed to. Cecil was shocked to see she was concerned about him as well. He offered her a handkerchief and told her to wipe her tears. He was here as her fiancé, and if she ever found herself in trouble, the two of them could think about what to do together. Oh man, guys, this is getting my heart. Another year passed, and at her house, Bertia told Cecil he was so awful. She quickly apologized for coming off so unbecoming of a lady. but he told her it was fine, asking if he'd done something to cause her charming face to crumple. She explained she wanted to develop more of a strategy against the epidemic, but all he ever replied in his letters was, "It's alright." She didn't know what to do. She desperately tried to collect Luana leaf, but didn't have nearly enough. And for some reason, when summer came, the disease didn't spread. And her mother was in perfect health. She didn't understand what was going on. He smiled, telling her not to worry. The epidemic did begin, just like she said, but it simply died down. She was blown away. He used the information she gave him to guess the disease and made medicine for it?
I guess I shouldn't be surprised. He just, I used your information to guess the disease, and I made medicine for it. I don't know why this still surprised me because he is a boy genius, but it's pretty funny.
As soon as it began spreading, the patients all received immediate treatment. She began to shake him, asking what he meant by all that, and he was happy to let her be the only one to let her treat him this way. He told her to relax, and they could talk outside. Going back to when she first told him about her mother dying, he decided to get permission from his father to use the royal greenhouse. His next step was to go to the library to read more up on the Luana leaf. He studied late in the evenings until sometime later, he was able to produce a giant Luana tree. It was the discovery of a century, but Cecil, as always, was pretty nonchalant about it. So basically, he develops a giant tree to cure COVID. This guy is definitely on another level. He wanted to work on medicine next, and asked Bertia about the characteristics of the disease. Then, borrowed knowledge from experts in medicine and pharmacy to identify the disease. Reading a book, he found a mutation of said specific disease, and so, after a number of experiments, easily completed a cure. To be prepared, he needed to next make sure the adults took action. So he pretended that he just happened to take interest in a certain disease, and invited a doctor who was studying into the palace as his teacher. He'd passionately discuss infectious diseases and the possibility of a new strain and how to combat it. Then, tell him about the effects of the Luana leaf he just happened to be obsessed with. Then set it up so that the new disease strain would connect to the Luana leaf, all with the goal of getting the teacher to come to the realization himself. Unfortunately, the doctor didn't get it at first, and Cecil didn't get why. A few months later, the doctor finally realized the Luana leaf could have some effect against this hypothetical disease, and that's how Cecil solved everything. Some more time passed. The first patient with the disease was discovered, and the same doctor gave her thorough medical treatment. Cecil was actually surprised when patient 0 really did appear, because of course, he didn't completely believe Bertia's story. However, Cecil learned a lot. The difficulty from guiding the doctor, and the fact he made Bertia feel so anxious, was likely a result of his own bad habits. He realized when he theorized, he understood too easily and had a tendency to omit explanations. Bertia asked why he would do all that, and he answered, "Why? I have no intention of ignoring my fiancée when she appears so anxious." She thought this was far above what an 11-year-old child should be able to do, but he knew, as the crown prince, he could use the library, and with his father's permission, he could call on brilliant experts for help. Zeno thought this was in no way normal for a normal crown prince. Bertia was still flabbergasted, but she supposed that's what she should expect from the genius known as the android prince. He was curious about that, but told her not to worry. Since her mother was safe, and the harm to the people was kept to a minimum, then it was all fine. She agreed, since everyone has evaded the evil clutches of the epidemic. But he could see she's given up on thinking about it. She was scared, hearing he still had another surprise for her. It was a handmade birthday present. Her eyes widened at what he presented. This was actually a universal antidote. While researching, he found something interesting in the library. It was a small puzzle that opened a vault to a secret part of the library. From there, he gained the knowledge to make this new antidote. Since she was going to become his wife, it was possible that her life would be threatened. He thought it could be a protective charm. The petals flowed as he wrapped it around her neck. He thought it suited her very well. She thanked him and swore upon the necklace to repay the debt of gratitude by making sure to thoroughly rectify the scenario by becoming the most magnificent villainess. Her first step was to make sure her father became a proper villain. She ignored him, saying that he thought losing a chancellor would be too problematic. To say she'd make sure he and the heroine get their happy ending. He could see she wasn't listening at all, but was fine, since it did seem entertaining, after all. Out in a forest, the heroine would find an injured bird. She told it there was nothing to be scared about, and suddenly remembered that you need to like the video and subscribe to my channel, because here on my Shoujo Weekly, I'm covering all the new releases in the shoujo genre. Villainous stories are some of my favorites. That's why I got a whole playlist for you here, filled with action, drama, and romance. Be sure to watch it if you're looking for more. So come on, remember to hit that subscribe, or you're getting isekai'd. Visiting the prince, Marquis Noches let out a huge sigh. It's been a year now since Bertia started recommending evil acts to him. A year since that outcry over the epidemic. Cecil thought time sure passed quickly. The other day, she even gave her father a handmade book for him to read called The Best Things About Being a Villain, Starting Down a Villain's Path by Zero. Oh my gosh, it's so cute. The book was incredibly easy to understand and entertaining to read, featuring clear depictions of the difference between legal means to make money versus illegal means. Cecil thought the numbers on embezzlement and fraud were oddly realistic. Perhaps info she gained from her previous life. Day and night, all she did was talk to her father about becoming a criminal. Cecil could see her actions were intended to keep her scenario from falling. He considered following up to smooth things over. He told the Marquis to not let it worry him too much. He assured him it was just a common adolescent phase where Bertia was attracted to men who were a bit bad. However, Douglas argued if that were true, then why wouldn't she try to make Cecil bad instead of him? That's a good point. But even then, Cecil laid it on smooth that she loved her father very much, and Douglas bought it immediately. Also, he thought Cecil's evil-mindedness tended to leak out, and his daughter must have decided she didn't need to recommend things to him. Switching topics, he brought up that it was time for his daughter's debut into society. He felt moved, but also extremely worried. Cecil told him it'd be alright. He'd support her, though if something interesting happens, he may let her flounder for a little while. We moved to the day of Bertia's social debut. How elated she was made Cecil's eyes widen. He told her she's become quite beautiful, making her flustered. And now, she was suspicious he had a favor to ask of her. But he couldn't right now, because today, she was going to advance her turn father into a villain plan. Cecil found her unfortunate nature so endearing. The people awed as the royal couple came out in matching outfits. Everything went smoothly. So much to the point, Cecil didn't expect Bertia to have no issues with her behavior. Viscount Laurie ComfyTea came forward, telling Bertia she looked lovely. Cecil somehow got irritated. Another man was touching his fiancée. He wondered just how close the two were. She was about to whisper something in the Viscount's ear, and Cecil suddenly pulled her away. He told the man he was terribly sorry, making the excuse Bertia wasn't feeling well, and thus, he'd be taking her away for a while. Privately, she'd ask what brought this on so suddenly, and Cecil told her to answer him honestly. He wanted to know if the information she gathered on being a villain was from the Viscount. She couldn't believe he read her book. She felt so embarrassed. But now, Cecil wanted to know the particulars. When the Viscount came to visit her father, she remembered he was one of the people who pulled her father onto his villainous path. That's why she did everything to become friends with him, where she succeeded at last in getting him to talk about evil deeds. Cecil would then reveal the Viscount was an Epstein disciple, notorious for liking young girls. He was a known pervert, romantically interested in children. He asked if Laurie ever touched her. Bertia's face grew shocked as she remembered the Viscount's lecherous face, and she screamed. On the surface, he seemed like an older man who was nice to children. Cecil couldn't blame her for not realizing. He embraced her, telling her it was all right, and he'd figure something out. Cecil wasn't spineless enough to stand silently by after someone laid a hand on his fiancée. He asked her if she came into contact with anyone else, and she answered no. She hadn't met the others who instigated her father in the game, Count Conmorno and Baron Sagil, yet. Cecil asked her to please stop doing these dangerous things, and she agreed. She didn't want to ever experience anything like this again. Which is why from now on, she was going to be very careful about interacting with them. Oh my god, she's learned nothing. He told her not to, but she told him if she stopped here, his bright future wouldn't happen. She swore to do her best, and Cecil could tell she had no intention of listening to him whatsoever. However, if handled correctly, he thought this would be a good chance to rid the kingdom of rot. Marquis Noches was worried his daughter had done something wrong, but Cecil met with him to discuss this matter. He explained through a certain channel he's heard rumors of Count Conmorno Baron Sagil and Viscount ComfyTea's improprieties, and that they'd been trying to make contact with him. Douglas couldn't believe the Viscount was making inappropriate acts towards his daughter. Cecil told Douglas not to bring this up to Bertia, and this was a ploy to make sure Bertia didn't find out about his own scheming by making sure her father didn't talk. Cecil then said he wanted to get rid of everyone involved, with Douglas's help. He wanted the Marquis to become a spy and find evidence of their wrongdoing, and Douglas got fired up. He'd crush them himself. The groundwork had been laid out. Cecil wanted to keep an eye on those men himself, but soon, he'd begin living in the dorms of Halm Academy. It'd be difficult for him to take action then. 6 months later, walking the campus grounds, he thought it was all so tedious. The quality of education here was high, but as a member of the royal family, he knew the entire curriculum already. He wished Bertia was here. He'd suddenly hear her call, "Prince Cecil!" And he was taken aback. She was storming towards him with her pet, and even though he wanted to embrace her, a royal couldn't lose their composure over something like this. She suddenly told him, "We have a child! We have a baby on the way!" Oh! This is a crazy first statement to come back to. Cecil's eye twitched, and mine would too. She continued on, and while the prince was just thinking he was bored, he had no recollection of wishing for carnage like this. One of the boys said, "That's Prince Cecil for ya. He's a man among men." Dang, aren't they like 12 now? But Cecil wouldn't dare lay hands on his fiancée before marriage. She didn't want to cause him this much trouble. She said it was such a happy event, but she couldn't bring herself to feel honest joy about it. Cecil wanted her to stop saying things that invited further misunderstandings. He gently asked, just who has become pregnant with whose child? He held her close, telling her if he didn't know, he wouldn't know how to help. Look, even her pet wasn't prepared. She apologized for being so silly, and then explained her mother was pregnant with her father's child, of course. Who else? With the others staring at them, she had to clear up this misunderstanding. And now that everything was cleared, Cecil began to drag her away, but not before making sure the other students promised not to let any odd rumors circulate. Cecil wanted Bertia to accompany him back in the carriage on the way back. That way, she could tell him everything as they traveled. Bertia already had a carriage though, since her usual marathon was a little too far to come by foot. Cecil noted it took 2 hours to get here from House Noches by foot. He asked her not to deny him though. He didn't want to be a horrid man who sent his fiancée away when she's come to see him. Her face went bright pink. She was happy he felt that way. But staying with him any longer, she'd die of embarrassment. It made him smile. He promised it was alright. Once it was just the two of them, he'd even give her her first kiss. Whispering her name made her shriek and run away. Cecil thought her reactions were so amusing. Adorable. He couldn't help himself. He told Zeno it was in no way revenge for her causing him to lose his composure earlier. Zeno thought he was so conniving. Bertia. Cecil really liked her name. He decided he'd call her by her first name from now on. 6 months went by, and he'd visit House Noches, where Bertia was holding her baby brother. However, Bertia's face was deeply sullen. This was the first time he entered her room. He took note of the colors she wore often, wondering if the blue and yellow were her favorite, and also wondering if it had to do with his hair and eye color. He questioned what this restless feeling in his heart was. She apologized to him regarding the matter of her little brother, Aneth. Turns out, in the original scenario, House Noches had no heir, and they were supposed to adopt a son from the lowest branch family. But of course, Bertia's mother survived the epidemic, and thus, the entire scenario has collapsed. The adopted brother should have been brought into the house by now and begun attending Halm Academy as Corgain Delis Noches. He would quickly begin to distinguish himself and emerge as a candidate to become Cecil's close aide. Cecil knew it'd be difficult for an untitled family member to enter the academy, and if he was truly exceptional, it'd be a waste of talent. Bertia then said avoiding a route where he and the heroine end up together was good. Cecil then asked her about that, since she said he was supposed to end up with the heroine, and so she explained there were a number of capture targets depending on the heroine's action. The person she ended up with could change. Cecil couldn't believe she forgot to mention something so important. He thought there was no need to break off their engagement, since the heroine could just be someone else's partner. But she couldn't let that happen, or else something would happen to him. She began to sweat, telling Cecil it was nothing, and that in any case, she'd make sure he and the heroine got together. It was obvious to him she was trying to gloss over this. He asked who the other captured targets were, and we learned it was all those destined to be his close aides. There was Val Nokins, Charles Loano, Nelt Crumb, and second prince, Sean Turcoing Alfasta. In this matter, the scenario should generate a compelling force so that when the time comes, an event would trigger and draw them all to the heroine. But if the same force was trying to have Corgain adopted into her family, then she could only imagine something bad happening to Aneth. She's been so afraid this whole time. Cecil could see that now. Very like her. He figured Corgain just needed to attend Helm Academy and become a candidate to be his aide. He had an idea and told her to leave it to him. When Corgain Delis Martin came home, he'd kneel immediately at a greeting by the crown prince. Cecil heard the people of these lands been complaining about their local lord, and since he was Bertia's distant relative, he wanted to ask him about that. Corgain couldn't believe Cecil would come all the way himself, and Cecil answered he had to listen to the people's voices as a member of the royal family. Corgain explained the lord here was very logical, a person worthy of respect, but just had an irredeemably horrible way of expressing himself. That was likely the reason he garnered unnecessary ill feelings. Earlier, in order to fulfill their taxes, some villagers harvested crops that weren't fully grown yet, and his lord scolded them about it. These crops would have more than doubled in volume if left for another 2 weeks. If they'd come to him for help, he would have accommodated them, and the farmers' lives would have become more abundant. What the lord told them was quite constructive, but unfortunately, he spoke so roughly, shouting, "Use your heads a little, you fools!" They ended up storming out of his office. This all coincided with exactly what Cecil's messenger informed him of. Corgain was able to clearly distinguish objective facts. "You pass, Corgain," Cecil said, adding he had high hopes for him and now had a request to make. He wanted Corgain to be adopted into a noble house and work as his informant on illegal matters in the kingdom. Corgain fell to his knees and wept, admitting he had given up. He thought he'd live like this for the rest of his life. He never imagined that Cecil would choose a non-noble from one of the lowest houses. He swore to repay this debt of gratitude with lifelong loyalty. And so, Cecil informed Bertia of his attendance at the academy. Just as the scenario dictated, Bertia was so joyous, especially since it seemed her father was on better terms with the villainous nobles more than ever. So now, if they could just avoid the reverse harem route, everything would be perfect. Cecil was confused. Bertie explained the reverse harem route was when one woman is in love with and loved by all male leads at the same time. Such a greedy route. Cecil thought that was unthinkable, since the queen having an affair would be treasonous. Even so, Bertie explained that because he'd love her, he couldn't leave her, choosing to share her instead. That route did exist. He asked what idiot would shake the kingdom for a love affair, and she divulged about some backstory involving the use of charm magic. But such magic didn't exist in this world. Cecil thought a light spirit might be able to achieve something similar. They purify the wicked and bestow a sense of euphoria on the righteous. The light of healing. Using that sense of euphoria, one could draw people to them, as if by magic. Bertia couldn't believe spirits existed, and Cecil was again confused, since they were both contracted by one. He mentioned she hadn't told him where she found Kuro. She explained that it was in a forest near the mansion. Kuro licked a wound for her, and that's when she named her. Well, turns out because of that, she made a contract with a high-level darkness spirit. These contracts were formed by giving them blood and a name. Bertia had no idea. Zeno also happened to be Cecil's contracted spirit. This was definitely too much for her brain to keep up with. With a single gesture, he had Zeno summon books for Bertia to study and learn about spirits. She wasn't ready for all that. Still, a romantic relationship with a heroine who uses light spirit powers to half brainwash people. He thought that it was such an extreme method to attempt on him. In town, the heroine would chase after Pichon, accidentally stepping in a puddle and splashing a bystander. The man was going to get angry, but Pichon reacted and would use light magic to charm him. He'd suddenly kneel and lovingly ask for her name. The heroine smiled, telling him Heronia Inderon. One particular morning, Cecil gave the welcoming speech to the newly enrolling students of Helm Academy. Since he was student council president, Bertia gleamed just watching him. In the student council office, we get introduced to the male leads of the game. Charles praised Bertia as Cecil's flower, complimenting her for drawing more attention than anyone else. Cecil's younger brother Sean thought she was so pretty, and because she was going to be his older sister-in-law, he wanted to be friends with her. Nell thought people like her with brisk, decisive energy made him a bit uncomfortable. Val thought she was magnificent with her beautiful legs and slender waist. Charles was surprised. He thought Val was only interested in combat, and teased the points Val was interested in was typical for a boy. Val responded, "Of course." For a noble's daughter, Bertia seemed to have trained quite a lot. Cecil knew the truth and was looking forward to Charles's reaction when he learned of her true nature. Charles asked Corgain about her, since he was technically part of the Noches family. He'd answered that his house was from the lowest branch, so that never happened. He told Charles he was interfering with his work, and to please not speak with him further. Cecil would get up to let the guys know he was off to see his adorable fiancée. The guys couldn't believe it. Aside from Cecil acting amiable, he always looked like he wasn't interested in other people. But Cecil would tell him he was interested in those who seemed entertaining. Charles suggested they all go visit her and pay their respects. Sean really wanted to go as well. His smile so bright these days, people referred to him having an angel smile, while in contrast, they called Cecil's a fallen angels. With the boys making their way, Cecil would take notice of the sparkling Heroine chasing after Pichon. He would give Corgain a brief command in response. He then greeted Bertia where she was having tea, and she was totally caught off guard. While there were very distinct individuals at this party, he thought the one who drew the eye the most had to be Kuro. In accordance to Bertia enrolling at the academy, this was the form Kuro was taking to stay by her side more appropriately. No one else could see her ears and tail, however. Bertia thought he was supposed to come later, but Cecil thought that was strange, since this was the time they arranged to meet. The purple-haired woman cut in next to give the prince a greeting. Her name was Joanna Kurtzwarn, the daughter of a duke. She and Cecil were second cousins. Joanna explained Bertia thought he'd be so busy he wouldn't come, and was even worried. She seemed restless, looking around, and then grew downcast. She thought Bertia was so adorable in that state. Bertia tried to stop her from saying more, and Cecil could see Joanna got amused by Bertia just the same. Bertia was excited to share with him that she'd made a lot of friends, or rather, minions. He could see she used minion instead of friend to try to make it sound worse than it actually was. He was sure she wanted to give it a flower of evil spin, but told her she shouldn't refer to her precious friends that way. She then felt bad and apologized, but Joanna told him to not let it trouble him. These ladies were all members of the Society for Adoring Lady Bertia. Red-haired Silica Lunea, green-haired Cynthia Sornelis, and brown-haired Anne Kogareth. They were an unofficial society more akin to a fan club, their modus operandi being to watch over Lady Bertia as she flourishes and grows. Bertia was extremely popular with all genders. Anne thought watching her was healing. Cynthia thought Bertia's kindness showed through, and it made her feel at ease. Silica didn't want to leave Bertia on her own, and felt she must watch over her, so she grew up just as honest as she was now. Bertia couldn't believe Silica saw herself as her mother. Cecil then pulled Bertia aside and congratulated her enrollment with blue roses. She got excited. This had to mean he completed the Meet Cute event, though the color of the roses was a little different than in the game. Blue roses were a legendary class item. He got them for her because she liked this color, and in all the world, there was only this one pot of these roses. She felt bad for accepting something so precious, but she loved them. They were the beautiful color of his eyes. With the ladies all gushing over her, she swore that it wasn't what she meant, but she just liked a pretty blue. That's why she liked it. With the scenario changing here and there, she was worried about what might happen, but felt relieved he successfully completed the Meet Cute event. He asked what that was, and she was shocked. Surely on the way to the party, he came across a pretty girl frolicking with a white bird. He remembered that girl was laughing in an oddly high voice and talking to a white bird. She seemed suspicious, so he had Corgain report her to a teacher. The girl kept glancing at people in an impolite manner, and he found it quite irritating. Bertia told him this was a dire matter. That person was the heroine of the game, the Maiden of Destiny. As soon as he saw her, he was supposed to take a red rose from the bouquet meant for Bertia and give it to her. That's the Meet Cute event. However, with him giving Bertia a potted plant, pulling out a single flower was impossible. Bertia asked if he felt anything from her. Did seeing her frolic with a bird, so unlike other ladies, spark his interest? He answered that a young lady who appeared wearing a live fox wrapped around her neck had a far greater impact on him. She thought the Meet Cute event was in shambles. Cecil meant to make her happy, but felt bad for troubling her. She told him it was fine though, allowing herself to be a little happy with his gift. Still though, the saddened look did not leave his eyes. In the student council room, Cecil would later welcome Joanna. Seeing her with Bertia for tea was unexpected for him, but she didn't think so. The moment she first met Bertia, she was completely charmed after Bertia saved her from nobles who were trying to hit on her. And Bertia wrote, "In season now, a complete collection of the best spots in the royal capital," which was what caused some of the members to join the society. Cecil cut to the chase. He was here to ask if there were any members within who posed a risk. Joanna didn't like that he was prying into a maiden's secrets. Cecil thought Joanna seemed far more like a villainess than Bertia did, and quickly countered that he'd tell Sean she'd been investigating him. She wasn't expecting that. He already knew Joanna adored his younger brother, and now she was crashing out, telling him this was why she hated black-hearted schemers. She couldn't believe he and the pure, adorable Prince Sean were blood relatives. And on top of all that, his fiancée Bertia even loved him. He teased her for being jealous, and it really hit her hard. She gave in, saying there were no dangerous elements in the society. She instructed them quite thoroughly. However, there were some who envied Bertia's popularity. On Joanna's blacklist was Heroine Inderon, a baron's daughter. Joanna described this list to contain ladies who admired Cecil or fiancés who harbored affection for Bertia. The gentlemen redirected their displeasure with Cecil towards Bertia. Cecil thought there'd be fun to come, but Joanna didn't see how he was so nonchalant, considering the predicament was dire for his fiancée. He didn't see it that way though. Since Bertia had the whole fan club beside her, he could relax, leaving it to Joanna. After her leave, he thought about how he had Bertia study Kuro's powers to protect her from Heronia's light of healing. Kuro's affinity is dark, which excelled at defense. She'd offer great protection, but as long as the existence of spirits must be hidden from the general populace, she wouldn't be able to use those powers openly against a human opponent. He pondered on what move to make next, though. On his way to meet Bertia, he'd spot Heronia sleeping against a tree, sitting down where he agreed to meet Bertia, but instead finding Heronia taking a nap. He wondered what his fiancée was trying to set up. Hiding behind the flowers in front of him, Heronia was coughing in a stupidly obvious manner that made it clear it was a setup. Cecil thought to read a book, but Bertia would suddenly scream over a hairy caterpillar climbing on her head. Cecil wiped it off, teasing that he'd driven off the bad bug that dared frighten her. She was so thankful, but now he asked if she was done playing hide and seek. Meanwhile, Heronia was still doing the out loud cough, hack, hack, until she'd eventually shout, "Oh, I just can't seem to wake up. I wonder if perhaps a prince might appear to wake me." Bertia asked if he shouldn't go and wake her, but he ignored that completely. It was so rare for her to invite him on a date. He'd been looking forward to it. He'd completely overthrow Bertia's plot by inviting her to tea. He had some delicious imported sweets, and she got way too eager. Heronia was pissed that the villainess was walking away happy, but Cecil just did not care. On another day, Cecil stared at Bertia endearingly as she stared at the clock. She'd go, "Oh my, silly me. I have forgotten something, but I have something to do after this, so I cannot go retrieve it. Oh, I know. Prince Cecil, can I ask you to get it for me?" Cecil and Zeno were dying because her acting was entirely wooden. He'd step out, and who was waiting for him? Ya guessed it, Heronia. She told him she never imagined seeing him here. A girl outside would rush back to the classroom because the teacher told her to lock it, and she totally forgot. So now, Cecil was stuck with Heronia. She'd say, "Oh, whatever shall we do, Your Highness? We've been locked in." He could see she seemed quite happy, all things considered. She would thank him for the lovely rose he gave her the other day, but he never did anything like that. This girl is max delusional, telling him it made her so happy she had it on her windowsill. And with the sky as a backdrop, the red was even more beautiful. He could see she was trying to force something that never happened into existence. That wasn't even the color of the roses he gave Bertia. He took note of the bird that must be the light spirit. With him smiling at her, she told him Pichon really didn't like most people, but he seemed special. She was about to ramble her love for him, not expecting Cecil to rush down the tree outside the window. She'd shout, asking what she was supposed to do up there all alone. However, he'd only think of how that ruined his gloves. He'd tell the teacher in front of him to go unlock the classroom. A year would pass since Bertia began her little tricks. She asked what happened to the heroine, and he just called her the girl with the bird, as if she were an indistinguishable side character, and say the two of them hadn't even introduced themselves to each other. Within Halm Academy, most of the rules of high society still applied. The extreme of these rules is that aside from administrative necessity, those of lower status must never speak to those of higher status. Unless you are introduced, acting as if you don't know each other is polite. According to this rule, Heroine and Cecil were still strangers, though she didn't seem like she was going to abide by proper manners. Bertia asked why. She guided him to so many event spots, and he shot back she'd been caught. So all the things that happened were on purpose? She was at a loss for words. He sighed, admitting he had thoughts about this, which was why he was maintaining a distance from the heroine. He asked Bertia to please watch over him. She could see he must have some profound plan. After all, he'd surely never let his beloved princess get away. And he assured her, keeping her unaware that his adorable princess was her and only her. He'd never let her get away. He wondered why, as of late, watching Bertia fight so hard to put him together with Heroine made part of him enjoy it, but also part of him was unamused. It wasn't simply that he found interacting with Heroine tedious. The tightness in his chest was more than that. He didn't understand what this emotion could possibly be. Bertia has been working at bringing Cecil and the Baron's daughter, Heroine, closer for roughly a year now. At the same time, she was also fighting to make progress with his personal aid candidates. She suddenly told him, "Your Highness, I will become Love's Cupid." And yet again, these were words he didn't quite understand. Bertia devoted every thought to ensuring he and Heronia's union would be guaranteed. He didn't need that kind of devotion, though. A brilliant idea came to her. The other capture targets merely needed to have other wonderful partners. So wonderful, they wouldn't have time to be drawn to the heroine. He realized by Cupid, she meant someone who acted to bring people together. She thought about starting to devote her efforts to bringing Vald and Cynthia together. They were already engaged, but didn't know each other very well. She left, excited to get started, and would be greeted by Anne, who seemed a bit down. The next day, Cecil would show up with Vald on his date with Cynthia. Cynthia turned out to be quite the skilled horse rider, and Bertia didn't understand. She was supposed to have a weak constitution because of the epidemic a few years ago. That didn't happen. Shouldn't that fact have answered her own question? Cynthia told them since being born, she's never contracted a serious illness. Bertia is so dumb, the prince had to remind her that he basically cured COVID. Now she was depressed because her game knowledge was useless here. Her plan was to have Val teach her horse riding, but since there was no teaching needed, Cecil thought about getting some up-close time with her. Val and Cynthia would declare a challenge to each other and sprint off. Cecil would also speed up so they wouldn't get left behind, and took a dangerous leap to enjoy Bertia's scream. Despite Cynthia losing, she had a lot of fun and invited Val to race her again. He was more than happy to. He'd put more training into it as well. Bertia, meanwhile, was still feeling a little weak. Cecil thought her reactions were so amusing. He may have gone a bit too far. She'd bounce back, though, because this Love's Cupid mission was a huge success. The two would spot Charles walking with yet another woman Cecil had never seen before. He thought Bertia was watching him with quite the expression. The next day, Charles came across Anne and noticed she seemed a bit pale. If she was worried about something, he'd be willing to hear her out. Any advice she needed, he'd resolve it with a whoosh and a bang. She smiled at him. He's always tried to cheer her up. However, this was something she needed to solve herself. Her father told her she needed to decide what she wanted to do with her betrothal to his older brother. It came by letter, so it was time for her to steel her resolve. Charles looked distraught, and Bertia would cut in to ask why he wasn't saying anything. They weren't expecting her. She told him he was the one who needed to resolve. In his youth, Charles could only watch as his older brother would leave with a woman, despite this particular day being the day his engagement candidates would be over at their home. The brother told Charles just to make some excuses for him as he went to woo this girl off alone. Charles thought his brother was hopeless, and seeing Anne was tearful with him walking away, he thought to cheer her up with a chat. With Bertia revealing he obviously liked Anne, he complained to Cecil. Having feelings for his older brother's potential fiancée was no laughing matter. That's why he's tried to forget her as quickly as possible by dating other women. But no matter what he did, there was no one he felt more strongly about than Anne. She was so dear to him that he hated her in equal measure. For her to have stolen his heart so completely, and to know he could never have her. Cecil saw Charles as usually easygoing and detached. He never imagined he was hiding such passionate, devoted feelings. Even worse, Anne and Bertia were standing behind him this whole time, and Cecil completely missed the timing to tell him. This is so stupid. Man, look at Anne's face, though. This is the face of a girl who's been waiting for this. Bertia called him utterly pathetic, but he knew if Anne married a second son like him, then the best she could ever be is the wife of a count. He turned back to respond she'd be much happier as the wife of a duke, having no idea Anne was there the entire time, completely flustered. Bertia told him economic stability was a necessity, but having love is the thing that made women happy. Plus, his older brother was an actual playboy through and through. Would he really accept him taking Anne? She reasoned that instead of her being a duchess married to an adulterous man, she would rather be a countess married to a gentleman who truly loves her. Anne meekly responded yes. Cecil then told Charles, while rank may be important, if he secured a position as the future king's personal aide, that would likely suffice in terms of social status. Whether he would reach that would be up to him. Charles knelt before Anne, telling her he's long been consumed with love for her. Aww. He swore to become a man worthy of proposing to her, and asked her to watch over him while he did. She placed his hand on his, expressing she understood the value of a political marriage, but if possible, she wanted to see what a happy marriage full of love might be like. She wanted to give it some thought, and just hearing that gave him the strength to become the Demon King's manservant. Of course, the Demon King would be Cecil. Mission success, even though the manner was quite forced. On another day, Bertia would greet Prince Jean. He was joyous over some rare sweets someone gave him. That's when Joanna entered scene. Oh no, aren't they like distant cousins? Bertia trying to set up the Alabama route. Sean got somewhat uncomfortable and made an excuse to leave. Run, man, don't do the incest route. Bertia couldn't believe he was acting this way towards a woman who might become his fiancée. Joanna told Bertia it didn't bother her at all. But either way, Bertia was going to come up with some kind of plan to help them get along. Nelt and Silica happened to be walking by. It's been so hot lately, his appetite's been low. But she insisted he at least eat the sweets she made for him. That gave Bertia a great idea. Operation Make a Gift of Handmade Sweets. Since Sean liked sweets, this would help Joanna become friends with him. Silica would be leading here, since she was quite skilled. What she gave Nelt this morning were cookies with vegetables in them. He didn't really like vegetables, so she researched in hopes that he'd be able to eat more of them. Preparing cookie batter, Silica asked why Sean acted weird around Joanna. Joanna believed she must have pressed him too hard, but she wouldn't get into that now. Silica found the more effort she put into becoming a proper lady, the more Nelt seemed afraid of her. The two were childhood friends, and since Nelt was mostly a loner introvert, she'd often be his conversation partner. She got lost just thinking about those times in their youth. 1 hour later, they'd stare at Silica's perfect cookies, Bertia's okay batch, and Joanna's burnt to a crisp. The girls tried to cope by saying Joanna's were probably only bad in appearance, but one taste test left them all depressed. Joanna's always been able to succeed at things to a certain extent, but her cooking left much to be desired. They'd encourage her to keep going though. Cecil would get a look at Joanna's handmade cookies with a full report from Zeno, and after some time passed, she'd present a whole new basket of cookies to Sean. She'd have him try one now, and he'd respond it was very dry. She apologized and explained she made them herself. She knew he loved sweets and was hoping to please him with them, but it was another failure. She began her leave, but Sean stopped her. The evening was particularly hot. It was unusual for the season. Nelt was also unwell. He'd been staying up all night, every night, dealing with complaint letters from his father. Bertie and Silica came to visit, bringing plenty of sweets. Silica would then nag Nelt a bit, telling him not to leave things scattered all over the floor. But he had enough. He told her she scared him, and he hated it. He wanted her to stay away from him if she detested him this much. She lost it with him telling her that just because they grew up together didn't mean she could meddle in everything. He found it annoying. Dang, I felt that hurt. The air in the room became awkward. Cecil could tell he was irritable at the moment, but this was too far. Silica had tears dripping down her face, and Bertia scolded Nelt, asking why he couldn't see Silica's kindness and love. Unknowing, he responded, "Love?" Bertia went on, saying Silica was the one always cleaning up the snacks he spilled. He ate the cookies she made, gave him a handkerchief to make sure his books didn't get dirty. If such devotion wasn't love, then what was all this? Silica tried to explain that assessment was all wrong and that she just had this type of personality. But Charles added he now completely understood how Silica was feeling right now. She squealed again they had it all wrong and took Bertia with her out of the room. She'd scold her on understanding the nature of a maiden's heart. Bertia nodded frantically in understanding. Silica took her own fault in this as well. They weren't children anymore. She thought she'd been far too meddlesome, and decided to keep her distance from Nelt for a while. Nelt was up all night thinking about Silica. He only now realized she usually made tea that helped him sleep. He hadn't seen her once today, including this morning. Not hearing a voice he always heard felt so strange. With him nodding off, he'd wake up to a blanket placed over him, thinking it was Silica. But it was just Charles. Silica always covered him with a blanket like that. She's always helped him, but he never noticed. Cecil told him to tell her just that. Nelt would find her outside. She apologized to him immediately, but he told her he was in the wrong. He felt terrible for saying those horrible things before, and admitted he couldn't see how much she helped him. He was sorry for being so dense, and said he'd try his best not to get angry from now on. And so, he asked, "Will you stay by my side forever?" She happily accepted. Bertie and Cecil were watching from afar. She thought it was time to throw a congratulatory party, but he wondered if she'd go overboard again. The two would then notice Sean and Joanna being friendly with each other. Bertia didn't understand. She thought Operation Make a Gift of Handmade Sweets was a failure. Cecil apparently spoke to Sean a little yesterday. Joanna's confidence always made Sean feel inferior. However, as he was consoling her after her failure in baking sweets, he said he was able to see her as a normal girl. He also said he felt a desire to protect her spring up within him. Cecil gave all the credit to Bertia. Bertia's love Cupid was something akin to running rampant, but in the end, one could call it success. However, Cecil wasn't yet aware of the tremendous ill will that had begun to grow within Heroine. One evening, two girls were looking at the latest magazine with recommended hotspots and stylish sweets. Just reading it was tons of fun. They heard this was made and produced by Lady Bertia and were so impressed. Until Heroine cut in to go, "Oh, whoa, I heard she actually made her attendants make it." And with a sullen, tearful expression, she told the two Bertia often bullied her because Bertia was jealous of her loveliness and popularity. Oh nah, now she's lying. It was around this time that Heroine, the Baron's daughter, began behaving more appalling towards Bertia. She made false accusations and spread malicious rumors. Cecil expected the villainess and heroine to be at odds, but this was a bit much. Corgain interrupted Cecil's thoughts to deliver the plan for the middle school student council. This spring, Cecil would be advancing to high school. The middle school student council was currently being led by Corgain. Corgain was a little embarrassed to ask this next. He politely requested permission to let Bertia call him Dear Brother Cor. Cecil declined it, sensing the notion would be distinctly unamusing for him, but now asked if Bertia was the one who brought it up. Corgain, of course, confirmed. Lately, it's been almost every day. She kept asking, "Please let me call you my dear brother Cor." Corgain would constantly reject this, but she became so obviously saddened, it pained him to do it. Cecil wondered why, despite talking about Bertia, this topic wasn't fun at all. He's learning you can't be so selfish with love. The rest of the council came in, and Cecil took notice of Charles's unusual earring. He told Cecil it wasn't just him. Vald and Nelt had them too. Their earrings all shined, but Charles was surprised Cecil hadn't received one. He was not happy about that. Man's letting off JoJo villain aura. Charles asked if he was actually mad, and now Cecil had to contemplate this. He realized he wasn't often shaken by emotion, so he hadn't noticed. What he was feeling was discontent and displeasure. With Bertia enjoying snacks he brought, Cecil would mention Corgain's dilemma. She explained that, unlike in the game, she wasn't his younger sister, but just a distant relative. That's why she was trying to secure a position as his sister, so she could block his interactions with the heroine. Cecil took note of this, since she was trying to constantly force him to be with the heroine instead. Bertia then added in her previous life, she never had siblings, so she's always longed for one. Cecil told her if she really craved a big brother, she could call him Dear Brother Cecil. Bertia lit up, but she stopped herself and shook it off. She told him Cecil was Cecil, and he was her fiancé, not her big brother. His eyes widened. He told her she could call him Syl instead. He wouldn't allow her to call Corgain big brother, so this would have to do. Bertia shook and stammered as Cecil continued to smile at her, waiting. When she burst out calling him Lord Syl, he patted her head, telling her, "Well done." Then after, he brought up the fact she had something she hadn't given him yet, and that when he learned he was the only one who hadn't received anything, it made him quite sad. She told him it wasn't like that. She just thought he didn't need it, and got a little overconfident in the design. He told her he did need it, and pulled the necklace right from her neck. The earrings she made matched both their hair and eye colors, along with the red thread of destiny linking it all together. He thought she thought of the most adorable things, and heard she's imbued everyone's earring with dark defense powers to block Heronia's charm magic. She even handed them out to her fan club. Bertie admitted that was true, but there was no need to protect him from her, so she thought it would be alright not to give Cecil his. She didn't want him to become a mere puppet though, and so he told her it was fine for him to accept it. That way, he could pursue the woman of his own volition. He placed the earring on Bertia's ear and had Zeno bless it. That triggered Kuro to get defensive over Bertia, but Cecil assured her it was fine. He just had Zeno use magic to make sure her earring never fell out. Dang, Cecil always thinking ahead about keeping her forever. Bertia began to panic. If they could never take their earrings off, they'd never escape the accusations of being a thoroughly besotted couple. Yeah, Bertia, that's his plan. Cecil found them being a couple bound by destiny to be amusing. She clamored on about how the heroine would go on a different route, but he ignored it and called her Tia. She couldn't believe he was using this timing to call her a pet name. The impact was devastating for her though. As he began to leave for class, she kept trying to tell him he had to remove the earring, and he completely ignored her again. It was just as he thought. Hearing things from her was much more amusing than hearing them from someone else. He'd get stopped in the hall by a messenger with a letter from His Majesty, the King. An unexpected message. He was being ordered to study abroad in a neighboring country for 4 months. We moved to him getting a tour from the neighboring country's duke, who explained alcohol was one of their country's specialties. The man mentioned hearing since the price of alcohol has risen, there were voices of dissatisfaction rising in Cecil's kingdom. It was plain as day as to what this man was doing. Cecil could see once this kingdom took root among people with its low prices, they'd raise prices. Those who became accustomed to the taste would buy even if a little pricier. The man was caught off guard. Cecil responded, that's simply what was in this man's best interest. But his own kingdom had been investing a lot of effort into brewing alcohol as well. He wanted to show the Duke the next time he'd visit them. The Duke nervously continued the tour. Cecil knew, with the dubious air of dealings that have commenced here, he'd been sent to keep things in check. He'd also been advancing negotiations in a manner that was advantageous to his kingdom. But even so, Cecil's grown bored of it all. Right now, the thing he looked forward to the most was letters from Bertia, and the reports he received about her from his messengers. In this latest letter, Bertia described Heroine as being popular with everyone again. He'd then read the letter from the messenger. In his absence, Bertia's position has worsened because Heroine has been trying to foist a number of indiscretions about her. These included a torn-up textbook, dead bugs planted in loose-leaf tea, pebbles put into shoes, and other misconduct. The harassment was now a common occurrence. The zealous supporters of Heroine and Lady Bertia's protectors were in conflict. Cecil thought Tia must have realized she's being harassed at this point. He wished she'd be more honest and come to him for advice. He was really bothered by the fact Heroine was trying to make Bertia the villain, even though she'd never done any direct bullying before. He wanted to act. 1 week later, Bertia welcomed Cecil back. He asked if anything unusual happened, but wasn't pleased to hear her say nothing at all. He told her about the reports, but she assured him that as the villainess, it meant things were moving in a good direction. She told him Heroine wasn't doing anything wrong. Cecil offered to handle the matter, but Bertia told him not to. She needed to set the example of evil, and once she turned the tables on Heroine, she wanted him to be there to comfort her so they could grow closer. Cecil couldn't understand why Bertia was protecting someone who was trying to hurt her. He questioned why she wouldn't rely on him. With a cold snap, he responded, "You're telling me to become more friendly with someone who's hurting my fiancé?" She told him she was only his fiancé for the moment, and that he should take care of his future fiancé. He interjected, telling her to stop. He would say it as many times as it took. She was his fiancé, and in his mind, she was the person he should be protecting. Despite her seeming sweaty and nervous, she told him she was a strong woman and had no need for his help, and so he told her to do as she wished. He stepped up, making the excuse he lost his appetite, and he'd excuse himself. He thought this was so strange, asking himself what he was so worked up about. It had been a month since he returned. The harassment directed at Bertia continued unchanged, but he's decided not to interfere in the slightest. He'd overhear some girls scolding Heroine for not submitting her school fair form. It was causing trouble for Bertia and the others who were organizing everything. Heroine feigned ignorance, saying she never received the form, but the girl called out her lie. Heroine was told over and over to submit it by the end of last week. Heroine used this chance to say Bertia was tormenting her again, but the girl calling her out thought she was abhorrent. Heroine began to cry her annoying crocodile tears, and her controlled simps tried to cheer her up. Guys, this is why you gotta ignore people who try to get sympathy from crying. I don't care if they're a girl, a child, a pregnant woman, or a man. Evil sympathy baiters need to be ignored or thrown in jail. Cecil could tell by the boys' eyes they were under the influence of charm magic. Bertia would ask what all the commotion was, and Heronia accused her of scheming again. But Silica and Cynthia could see she was the one creating these stupid situations for herself. Bertia called for them to stop. She cleared her throat and told them she'd never run nor hide. Heronia was her prey, and she'd confront her herself. Bertia was very proud. She thought that was such a villainousy line. Heronia was about to continue on about how cruel Bertia was being, but the other girls were enamored by Bertia. No matter how cruelly she was treated, she always took it upon herself to confront it fair and square. Heronia was crushed hearing them call her virtuous. It was so bad, her animation went low quality. They applauded her for protecting Heronia to make sure she wasn't outnumbered and attacked, and promised to work hard to become kind, strong women, just like Bertia. Heronia scoffed and took off. Having observed the whole thing, Cecil would check on Heronia to see her viciously stabbing Bertia's chair with a knife. Bruh, she crazy. Zeno suggested they stop her. However, Cecil wouldn't. Bertia already told him she didn't want his help. Heronia ran outside, and he told her if she took it too far, she'd end up all the worse for it. He didn't intend to threaten her. It just happened. He realized entrusting things to others while taking no action was tedious. Zeno wished Cecil would just be more honest with himself. Sean would burst into Cecil's office, asking him to do something. Heronia's attacks on Bertia pained both him and Joanna deeply. Cecil explained Bertia told him she wanted to handle things herself, but Sean couldn't understand. He thought Bertia was special to him. Cecil admitted he hated that his fiancée was hurting, but what else could he do? Sean could now see the fact Bertia refused to rely on Cecil made him feel lonely. Cecil couldn't believe it. He actually did feel a bit lonely. Charles suddenly came rushing in. He was sweating and panting. He told Cecil Bertia fell down the stairs. Oh my god, I hate Heronia. She did this, didn't she? Keep up with what happens next by subscribing to my channel. But for now, watch this next video. It's me, ComfyTea. I'll see you all in the next one.